You won't believe it when it happens, and that is the truth, folks. I've been in disaster relief. I have dealt with folks that have been coming out of civil war, great atrocities overseas, things that happen in the U.S. with storms, hurricanes, flooding, situations that were catastrophic. I remember talking to a lady in Kentucky who she woke up hearing the rumbling of the creek or the creek behind her as the water rose, and as she looked around the room, the whole room was flooded with water, and she was on her bed, and the whole room was flooded with water, and she was up in her 70s or 80s and just elderly, and just traumatic experiences. But one of the things that we see again and again in these crisis situations is that people don't respond to emergencies like you think they would. Most people cling on to this normalcy. We call it normalcy bias sometimes when we're talking about like a longer term kind of thing. But in the immediate moments of it, and you've probably heard about this already, but I want to just explain how this is impacting a lot of what's going on today. We have, always get those conversations in the comments section where people are like, this isn't really a problem. This isn't going to be a problem. These things, everything's going to get back to normal. Everything's going to go back the way it was. And there's these people, and the vast majority of Americans are there, and much of the world is there too, where they see the same facts that we do. They may listen to this channel and may hear the things that are happening, but then they tell themselves in their hearts that it's not really a crisis, it's not really an emergency, and they don't think that anything will ever change, and so they don't take any practical steps. And perhaps this is you, and I understand it. I was doing a disaster relief training. It was kind of like a job placement slash like an interview slash training, but it was a week and a half long thing in Switzerland with an organization, highly intensive and very stressful, extremely stressful. They coordinated with the Swiss military. There were no knives involved. The Swiss Army was there, but the Swiss Army knives were not that I could see. But they were doing. They were part of the training and everything like that. And one of the things that I realized about myself, and we all need to be honest with ourselves about things, is that when I become very stressed, I have a very difficult time making decisions. And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people will freeze up in situations like that. Now, you can overcome some of that with training. You can learn to respond by thinking things through before you get into a situation like that. But a lot of people will do that. They'll freeze up in a situation, and whether it's a car accident or whether it's someone is going to crisis, you've probably seen this happen, where a lot of people just kind of stand around, like their brains just kind of go into lockdown. Other people, they just kind of refuse to admit that there's a situation going on, and so they just kind of keep on behaving normally, like there's nothing actually happening. And we see that right now with the United States, is that I think most people in the United States, they see enough of the data points, they see there's a problem, they see there's issues, but most people choose to believe that everything's fine, or everything will be fine shortly. That the Federal Reserve will fix things, or the government will fix things, or businesses will fix things, or the free market will fix things, or whatever else they believe in, that whether America is God's chosen country or your country is God's chosen country. People believe the craziest things, and they're not even necessarily able to articulate exactly why they believe everything's going to sort out. They don't want to have to deal with it. A lot of people are already stressed as it is. A lot of people have too much on their plate as it is, and they just realize that they can't handle the world's problems. They can't handle the what ifs. They can't handle, even though they may see that that is the most logical explanation of what's going to happen next, they can't deal with it. So when you look at the numbers of how much food American families have in their homes, the average is 3 days worth of food. Now, for some of us, we have a lot more than 3 days of food. So you got to realize that a lot of people are bringing that average down very, very dramatically, because a lot of people have hardly any food at all in their homes. A lot of people eat out all the time, or they go to the store and they pick up their food on the way home, and then they eat their food at home, or they eat out or whatever, but they don't really have anything more than condiments back at home. This is a reality of a lot of people in the United States. And this is not just the United States. It's actually, in a lot of ways, worse in a lot of other countries. People may realize that there could be problems. Hey, there's a hurricane headed at us. I better go out and buy some bottled water. This is why you see this every time. Same thing up north here when we get a little bit of snow. Everyone suddenly realizes they need milk and bread. Down south, if they get the warning of snow or freezing temperatures, they wipe out their stores of bread and milk and all the other things. But you'll still find a whole bunch of people who heard about the storm say, well, I didn't really think it was actually going to happen. It's like, what are you talking about? They've been talking about in the news for 2 solid days. What, you heard them, so what were you hearing that made you think, well, I just didn't think it was actually going to be a big deal? What they're saying is that they saw the information, but yet they rejected the information. Their mind just kind of said, I'm not dealing with that. Not going to deal with that. It's probably not going to be a thing. And if it is a thing, then I'll just figure it out then. And that's how a lot of people get through life. How much money do they spend on their credit card this month? All the purchases, all the evidence so far lines up that they're going to be not able to pay their credit card at the end of the month, but they're not going to deal with that. Even though it's not even like out of their control. It's absolutely in their control. They can't deal with it. And so they won't deal with it. And at the end of the month, they get shocked again. Can you believe it? I didn't realize my credit card bill will be this much. Why didn't you look up on your app, like your purchases? Or why didn't you track your purchases? I mean, why didn't you think about that when you were making your purchases? But yet that is how much of the world behaves, is they just won't deal with reality. Friends, I beg of you, be people who deal with reality. And I realize much of the people watching this channel right now I'm preaching to the choir. But you need to hear it again. Because I think sometimes you look at the irresponsible people around you, the people who don't have a basic car kit, like I'm talking like either flares or triangles, or, basic tools, a little bit of food, just basic things in your car. And if you know me, the biggest thing you need to have in your car is an alternate form of transportation. I've talked about that so many times. People have a bug out bag so they can walk home. It's just like, get a scooter. Put a scooter in your car. You can get home 3-4 times faster than walking home. You'll put some extra wheels in your car. And I'm talking about a scooter or a small bike or whatever you can get in there, rollerblades if you're into that kind of a thing, whatever. But we see people all the time who just, their tire goes flat. Oh, I don't have a spare. What do you mean you don't have a spare? The car came with a spare. It came with a jack, it came with a spare. Like, what'd you do with it? Oh, I took it out. Or it popped and well, why didn't you replace it? Well, I didn't think this would happen. You didn't think that you'd eventually get a flat at some point? Like, friends, normalcy bias could be rephrased in a lot of situations as the stupidity bias. the irresponsibility bias, the I'm not going to be prepared for anything. People need to grow up. And if you are a grown-up and you are someone who is proactively looking at least basic things and saying, I need to be prepared for the basic things of life that will come up. If you go out with the baby, you take diapers, right? I mean, come on, seriously. Everybody should know that, right? If you are one of those adults who is being prepared, you have some food stocked up, you've been trying to get more prepared as best as you can, don't lose heart just because everyone around you is looking at you like you're a crazy person. Just because you get kicked off Facebook because you talked about canning, or you start suggesting to people that they stock up a little bit on food, right? There's plenty of food at the stores right now. It's not hoarding, just stock up some extra, right? And that's what we keep saying to people. And, you know, people look at you like you have 3 heads. But don't lose heart. Realize why they're doing what they're doing. And that is they're choosing not to deal with reality. It's not a logical, rational reason why they're doing what they're doing. What they're doing is because they feel like they're up to their eyeballs already. They can't take on the emotional or anything else on top of them. Believe me, if you have stocked up some weeks of food, you are ahead of the game significantly. Don't lose heart about that. Don't be discouraged, but don't lose sight of where you need to go. What might happen? What will probably happen? And how can you, as easily as possible, prepare? And don't feel like you need to jump in the deep end and do crazy big things at first. Do the easy stuff. Take a lot of basic, simple actions. Get your rice and beans in buckets and such. Talk with people who live, if you live in the city or live in the suburbs, talk with people who live outside, whether they're family members or friends that they live out on a farm, they live out in the country or something like that. Talk to them about just, hey, you know, if things kind of went sideways or whatever, would we be able to come out and visit and stay with you? You know, we'd be happy to contribute or whatever, and just kind of find a way to make that work. Whether that's pre-positioning some stuff there, if that would make them feel better about it. If it's going to be more of a hassle for them to have you do that, then, you know, think of something else. But just be, a lot of it's about network building, just building relationships with people. That's a huge thing that you can do. All right, folks, if you have some suggestions for other people of how to kind of get started, just getting a little more prepared, or encouragement for other people who may be just struggling a little bit with needing some encouragement because everyone around them is saying you're crazy for that, you know, pop that down in the comments down below. And if you found this video useful or helpful, you want this to get out to more people, hit that thumbs up button, folks. Get this out to more people. All right, folks, there's another video right up here that you might want to check out from this channel. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.